Hello, beautiful ones. Thank you so much for joining me this week and welcome if you are new. My name is Leisha, and on my channel, I share my personal self-improvement journey or my level up journey. I am working on refining myself through integrating elegance, enhancing femininity, and building affluence. Please subscribe if you're new and like to follow along with my journey. I typically upload every Sunday. At the time of recording this video, it is October, and so there are less than 3 months until January. Believe it or not, January and February are actually when most companies do the bulk of their hiring for the year. So if over the next few months you're going to be finishing up with that certification you've been working on, or your degree perhaps, or if you're looking to just make a change and level up into a new role with a new company, now is the time to start preparing so that you can hit the job market in January really strong. But before I dive into what to do and what not to do in a job interview and share some job interview tips with you, let me first really quickly give you a quick background of what I do, where I am currently, so that you will know where I'm coming from. So I currently work in the tech industry in a senior level role. I conduct primarily project management and work across all departments in the company and a variety of roles. I work with a lot of technical people, but I also work with some people who are not so technical. I work with people who are really just starting out their careers. They're very junior levels all the way up to senior levels and executives in the company. As far as candidates I have interviewed for developer roles, business analyst roles, and project management roles, just to name a few. I would say that I have mostly interviewed people who are coming in at an entry level or junior level with experience, but I have also interviewed other people who are more mid-level type of experience to fill these roles. Fun fact, I also did some brief work in my 20s when I was trying to figure out some things and how to support myself in a temp job agency where I would phone screen applicants, mostly for roles in the industrial field. One last thing really quickly before we dive into what to do and what not to do in a job interview is to keep in mind that all hiring managers and companies are different, and you may want to do a little bit of research into who you might be interacting with in the job interview. You can use LinkedIn for this for sure, at least to find out what their background is and what they do at the company so that you will be able to better field their questions and understand a little bit more about what they're looking for. So now let's get started. I'm going to start out with the things not to do and share what to do instead. And I'm also sharing these things that I have recently seen, especially as we have been conducting virtual interviews. And so I think that moving forward, you're going to be interacting a lot more virtually, especially before you may actually go into the office to do an in-person interview with the whole world situation that's going on right now here still in 2021. Okay, so let's get started with the very first thing that I have to share. Now, some of these are pretty obvious, but do not show up late to the Zoom call, okay? And I'm gonna say Zoom call just as a blanket term for virtual conference call, but do not show up late. Make sure that you avoid showing up late potentially by testing out your connection beforehand. Make sure that you understand how to use Zoom. Make sure that you've got your microphone hooked up correctly. You can do this by testing with your own free Zoom account, okay? So there's really simply no excuse to show up late to a Zoom call, especially when perhaps you probably did not have to make a commute into the location to be interviewed in person. This is something else that should be very obvious, but do not come to the interview unprepared with knowledge about the company or the role, especially that you are interviewing for. Make sure that you take some time, set aside some time the night before or the few days before, and research the company that you are applying to work for. There are several ways that you can do this, as most companies have an online presence these days that you can look at on LinkedIn or on their company website. Make sure you especially read what other employees have to say on a website like Glassdoor. You can kind of start to get a feel for and an understanding for what the company is all about and speak to those things when we interview you. One of the very first questions that we ask is, how did you hear about our company and what led you to decide to apply for this position? It's really important to put a few things about the company that you've learned, even if it's just something you've heard or you're not sure about. Just make sure that you show and put forth the desire to work for the company, and as that shows that you want to be a contributor to our success. Now, this is something that I feel like is also obvious, but it can really creep up on you in an interview. Do not speak negatively about your current situation or past situations that you've worked in during the current job interview. Try to avoid really bashing your former or your current boss, your current company. There are ways that you can word your answers to what leads you to seek to apply for this position or seek to come to this company instead, without being completely negative and stating that you're unhappy with where you are. Some phrases that you can use instead to sort of describe what you're looking for and why you're looking to make a change include, I am seeking a new opportunity for growth. I have just recently obtained my certification in XYZ and would like to put it to use in this role. Things like that. So always have the mindset of, I'm making this change because I want to grow, I want to contribute and use my skills here in this role, and it's time for me to move on to something new. There are, of course, questions that we might ask you about certain challenges that you've dealt with in your current role or previous experiences. And again, you can always frame those very positively without bashing anyone that you've worked with or without divulging too much negativity in your statement. It is really essential that you come with a little bit of a positive air in these types of answers, just because when we look at who we're going to be selecting for this role, we do so realizing, like, can they handle a challenge? Especially in the tech field, there are so many challenges that we deal with every single day. It's a part of the job, solving problems. And if you are speaking about problems from your current job or past experiences in a very negative light, it kind of shows that you don't deal with challenges and problems very well. We want to have people surrounding us who are problem solvers and who are positive problem solvers. So please keep that in mind and do not bring any negativity from your life or your current job to the interview. Next, do not show up sloppy to your virtual interview. It's very tempting because you can be on this interview from the comfort of your home, and you may also be applying to a company that you know it has a reputation for being a very casual work environment. I'll use the tech industry just as an example because although not all tech companies have a very casual dress code, we do have a reputation for it. So although you may be able to show up to work in a hoodie and jeans and that sort of attire, for a job interview, it's best to, again, present yourself with a little bit more effort. So for you ladies that are just getting started, I would definitely recommend at least a collared shirt, maybe a blazer. Again, keep in mind too here that you want to do a little bit of research on what the company dress code is like. If you can, try and go on LinkedIn and see if there's any photos of their employees at different events and get an idea of what is the style, okay? So, for example, if you're going to be applying for a job in the fashion industry, you may want to put a little bit more flair into your outfit for a job interview. If you are going to be applying for a job at a bank, I think, blazer is the way to go, but there is a variety of what's appropriate for job interview attire. I just think that it's best to play it safe, showing up in your best, make sure that you combed your hair, you did a little bit of makeup, and that you're presenting your best self, but not going too over the top. Additionally, this is something that I have actually experienced on some interviews, unfortunately, and that is, to keep in mind that part of your sloppy appearance on a virtual job interview is going to be what's going on behind you in the background. So please make sure that if you are in your dorm, that there's no laundry on your bed hanging out. It's nice and neat behind you. Even if you don't use a background on your call, you can do a little bit to make sure that there's nothing distracting going on and that everything looks organized behind you. We do pay attention to things like that, and it can be a little distracting. We want to be able to focus on our conversation, on you, getting to know you, and seeing if you would be a good fit for the job role, not focusing on what is running behind you or what is sticking out of that box that looks like a pizza box from 2 nights ago. The next thing I wanted to point out not to do is do not be humble about your job experience, even if you think that you may not have enough to actually be considered and be hired for the role. Be confident. You can always find ways to clearly explain and state some of the experience that you have shared with us on your resume. In fact, we will probably ask you about some of the specific experience that you've already listed out in your projects. And we might ask you, what did you really do in this role on X project that we see on your resume? Be ready to explain what you did in a very clear way. You do not want to exaggerate here, but be proud and show us that you have the experience that led you to get the interview in the first place. We typically don't interview candidates that we feel do not fit the qualifications for the role. So if you got the interview, there's something on your resume that we are intrigued by, and you should be confident in sharing with us. Now, there's something else you shouldn't do when it comes to answering questions about your experience, and that is do not divulge every single little detail. When we ask you to explain how XYZ projects went and what you did in those projects, we don't need to know every detail, every conversation, how the conversation went word for word with the people on your team. We don't need to know all of those details. It will actually make you seem like you're rambling if you approach giving out too much information in the interview like that. And that might make you seem nervous and end up showing that you're not very confident. So make sure that, again, you've written out what the experience is that you have and can give specific examples, but you don't need to go into every single little detail. This is also important to keep in mind if you have past experience in government, or you really should not be sharing certain pieces of information that are supposed to remain confidential. So keep that in mind. But we do want to hear, can you apply what you have done in the past to the concepts that we are looking for someone to be proficient in to fill this role that we're hiring for. We just want to see that you have the level of experience that is required to be successful in this role, and we don't, again, need to know every single little tiny detail. Again, do not enter the interview with low energy. Do not stay up the night before and therefore show up to the interview very tired and sluggish. We don't want you to be fake, and we don't want you to present a personality that you feel like you have to keep up with every single day, but it's always best to bring some positivity, some energy, maybe a smile when you greet us, when you introduce yourself, and a smile at the end when you say goodbye, and again, a thank you for the time, right? So don't bring negative energy and a tired energy to your interview. Step it up just one notch, We do want to see that you're someone who would be enjoyable to work with, who's not going to make us feel tired while we work with you, and who has the energy that we want to see on the team ultimately. Even if you have a tough interview with someone who is very serious during the whole entire time, it will go a long way to still show a smile and give a thank you at the end for their time. Last but not least, do not forget to end the interview with a couple of questions for the interviewers. This is a really great time to remember that the job interview is a two-way street. You may find that there are things that you learned in the interview that make you think maybe this company is not the company I want to work for, or maybe this role is probably not the best fit for me right now. Make sure that you have 2 or 3 thoughtful questions that you have written down in advance, and you can also use that time after you receive your answers to respond in a way that further sells yourself as the fit for the role. So what do I mean by that? Maybe you ask what the day-to-day life is like, or what are some goals for this role, and the interviewers can give that answer, and you can state why you think that you would be able to achieve those goals. So don't forget that those questions you ask at the end, that's your last chance to make a good impression. Wrapping up here now, and I want to leave you with this. At the end of the day, interviews are a two-way street. I have been in interviews for positions where I was sitting on the other side and wanted the job, But I ended up learning in the interview that maybe this wasn't the role that I wanted or thought it was, or maybe this was not the company that I actually wanted to pursue working for. Bring confidence to the interview, and no matter what, no matter which way it goes, you know that you did your best, you presented your best self, and that is all that matters. Especially if you are just entering into the job market for the first time and or making a career change, you have to realize that you need the practice of interviewing. So keep showing up for interviews, be grateful for every opportunity that you have to join in on an interview for a role. The perfect fit will come along the more that you keep trying and keep on leveling up. Thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up if you found it helpful, or if you would like me to share more on the career aspect of my leveling up journey, as having a career in this current stage of where my husband and I are has been something I have greatly benefited from. And if you haven't caught up with any of these videos you see here on the screen, I will see you there. And until next time, bye.